All right, let's just jump right into it. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to decode Chapter 7 of Erica Meltzer's Complete Guide to SAT Reading. And today, we're laser focusing on those mysteriously tricky text completion questions. If you're gearing up for the digital SAT, well, this is exactly the masterclass you need. I know those blank spaces at the end of passages can look incredibly intimidating, but don't worry. Today, we're going to break them down into an exact science.
Here is our quick playbook for today. First, comprehension with a twist. Then, we'll map out a 4-step roadmap. After that, we'll look at valid conclusions versus speculation. And finally, we'll tackle angles and double negatives.
So let's kick things right off with Section 1, comprehension with a twist, which is really the core concept here.
Students so often just panic. They see that blank space and think they have to somehow magically read the author's mind, so they just guess. But the author of our source text brilliantly points out that these are actually, quote, essentially literal comprehension questions with a twist. Okay, so what does that actually mean? It means all the information you need is already literally sitting there in the text. You just have to put the puzzle pieces together and make explicit an idea the passage intentionally left unstated. Yes, it's a leap of logic, but it is a super small, highly calculated leap. Let's look at an actual SAT text completion passage right from the source material. This one's all about the regal angelfish. Up close, apparently they're super brightly colored, but as they retreat against a coral reef, their lines merge. Marine biologist Gil Rosenthal notes that distance and motion make it really difficult for predators to perceive fine details. So notice how we're building up a highly specific scenario right here.
And then, boom, we hit the twist. Therefore, from far away, blank. Now remember, all the evidence is right there. It's building up to this exact blank space that we are challenged to logically complete. We aren't just making things up out of thin air, right? We're figuring out exactly how a predator perceives that fish from a distance based purely on the explicit text we just read.
Okay, so how do we actually solve this without second-guessing ourselves into oblivion? Let's move to Section 2, the 4-step roadmap, which is basically your foolproof strategy. Consider this your bulletproof playbook for basically any text completion question. Step 1. Carefully read the claim or the theory, which is usually sitting right before the blank. Step 2 is absolutely crucial, restating it in your own words. And don't write a novel here, just a quick 3 to 6 word summary on your scratch paper. Step 3. Work out the implications while staying glued to the passage. And finally, Step 4. Look for the answer choice that perfectly matches your derived conclusion. Let's see how this actually builds.
Let's apply this straight to our angelfish passage. We read that final claim about distance blurring details, right? Then we restate it nice and simple on our scratch paper. When reef fish retreat, they blend with their background. Just by doing this, we've naturally worked out the core implication. From far away, predators have a really hard time seeing brightly colored reef fish because, well, they just blend in. Now, if that seems almost too obvious, actually, that is exactly the point. Now for the final step, tackling those actual multiple choice options. Option A brings up sediment, which, wait a minute, that is nowhere in the text. Option B claims predators must rely on visual aspects, which actually completely contradicts the passage. But then look at option C. Spots and stripes blur together, allowing even stationary fish to merge into the background. Bingo. This directly, almost perfectly matches our simple, derived conclusion. By staying tethered to the text, it led us absolutely flawlessly to the right answer.
So the absolutely crucial point here is knowing the difference between the textual truth and a clever trap, which perfectly cues up Section 3, valid conclusions versus speculation, or how to avoid common traps.
Now, speculation. Speculation is the true villain of this explainer. It's this half-right, highly plausible trap that literally tricks thousands of students every single year. And why does it work? Because it sounds like it could absolutely happen in the real world. But here's the catch. Speculation lacks sufficient evidence to verify in the passage itself. Sure, it might be true in reality, but if the passage didn't explicitly say it, it's wrong. Simple as that.
Think of yourself as a test-taking detective. You have to actively contrast these two concepts. Valid inferences, they just simply rephrase what is firmly established in the text. Speculation, on the other hand, takes a factual starting point and then just lets your imagination run totally off script. Just remember this golden rule. Fit the answer to the passage, not the passage to the answer. If you find yourself having to bend the passage's wording to make an answer work, stop. You've definitely stepped into a trap.
Let's really elevate your skills now by exploring Section 4, Angles and Double Negatives. These are your advanced pro moves. The SAT test makers absolutely love to deliberately trick you by hiding the right answer in plain sight. How? By stating the exact same textual idea from a surprisingly different angle. You see, you're not always going to get a neat one-to-one synonym match. Quite often, you'll actually need to logically invert the sentence to see that it means the exact same thing as what you originally read. Shifting the angle frequently involves using negative language. For instance, notice how saying a star is older than Earth carries the exact same logical charge as saying it is not younger than Earth. Make sense? Or, if a passage claims a muscle contraction occurs only when lowering weights, the correct answer might flip that and say it occurs when they are not raising them. Same exact idea, just viewed from a completely different angle.
And that brings us to another brilliant trap, the dreaded double negative. This is a really tricky grammatical construction that mathematically creates a positive meaning, but man, it forces your brain to work overtime during a stressful timed test.
When you encounter these in the wild, do yourself a favor and do a quick mental translation. If an answer choice says a result is not impossible, take a second, pause, and translate that back into its positive meaning. It just means it's possible, right? If a detail is not unimportant, it's simply important. You absolutely must decode these layers to make sure the core meaning actually aligns with the passage, rather than letting the confusing syntax steer you right into a wrong choice.
Take a look at this final case study about muscle contraction from the source text. The passage states that a type of contraction occurring only when people lower weights is most effective at increasing muscle strength. By focusing purely on the text's precise wording, we can easily infer the flip side. Raising weights is less effective. What we actively avoid here is falling for off-topic recommendations about what athletes should do. Why? Because the text never gives advice. It only reports findings. We stick strictly, completely to the evidence. Master the twist. Watch out for those shifting angles, and honestly, you'll turn text completions into your absolute highest scoring question type. But the ultimate question I want you to take away from this explainer is this. When you're faced with that intimidating blank space on exam day, are you going to let your imagination run wild with plausible speculation? Or are you going to use this playbook, anchor yourself to the text, and rely solely on the evidence?